What's good? Welcome to another episode of the Blue Collar Bass Podcast. Look, y'all are in for a treat today. But before we get into it, if we haven't met, my name is Ted and I talk bass. I am passionate about helping bass players of all levels and abilities navigate this world of what I like to call the blue collar bass player. One of the ways that we do that is through conversations that we're like the one that we're having today. I have one of the hardest working people in the whole bass business, Angeline Saris, with us today. Let me just give you a little rundown, okay? Angeline Saris is an accomplished bassist known for her versatile playing across a wide range of genres, from rock to funk, jazz, Latin. She's performed with renowned artists like Narada, Walden, Ernest Ranglin, Zepparella, showcasing her ability to bring dynamic grooves and technical expertise to any musical setting. Also, she got one of the coldest singles out. It's called Come Undone. There will be a link for you to go check that out. There's a bass breakdown in there that I'm going to get her to teach me at some point. Angeline, I'm super glad to have you here. I know that you're super busy. But one thing I know is that you are working. You're always playing with somebody, recording with somebody. And, you know, there's cats out there that are trying to figure this world out. And how do you make that happen? So I want to dive deep into, how your journey. How do you go about landing gigs? How did you just get the ball rolling? So wherever you want to start on that, I'm all ears. We're all ears.
Mm. Well, thanks for having me. Super stoked to be here. And I'm happy to share any parts of my experience. Hopefully it'll be a little helpful. I don't know. I think the first thing is you gotta love it, because if you don't love it, then you're not going to last. Because it's like, I remember in the beginning, it was like I would say yes to anything. It didn't $50 gigs, free gigs, whatever. And the reason I did it is just because I love playing bass and I wanted to grow and I wanted to learn. And to be honest, I mean, minus the fact that maybe I get paid a little more now, is like, it's the same mentality. I just say yes to a lot of things. And it's because I love it. I love playing. I love learning. I love trying out new genres and just hopefully growing.
Yeah. I want to touch on something that you said, because we hear this a lot about taking $100 gigs, and
Yeah.
some people stand firm on don't take $100 gigs, and I'm like, well, it kind of depends. You know what I mean? Because almost everybody that I know, myself included, a lot of those high paying gigs can be traced all the way back to some hole in the wall $50 gig, free gig. I had a guy tried to pay me one time in Chinese food. And then one time, I kid you not, I had a guy try to pay me in Bitcoin, and nobody knew what Bitcoin was. And I wish I would have taken the Bitcoin.
I was going to say, I bet you regret that one. Yeah.
I regret not taking the Bitcoin. So, but let's talk a little bit more about your philosophy on the money part of the gig triangle.
Yeah. Well, obviously we have to make a living. So not every gig can be that kind of gig, but I think there's the question of, I think Chris Chaney, I heard an interview with him and he brought something up that really resonated with me, which was, there's this trifecta and you got to have two out of the three, good music, good hang, good money. And if you don't have at least a couple of those, then, it's not really worth your time. And I don't know if I live and die by those, that trifecta, but it's true. It's like the music's got to be something that I really love, or the hang. Obviously, a lot of our job is about community, and building community, and it's actually just a beautiful residual effect of just doing what we love. But I think in that community, it's like, oh, if my buddy calls me up and wants me to come out, but maybe he doesn't have a lot of bread for the gig, I'm happy to come out. because one, I love the music, and two, is my buddy, you know? But then there's also, there's also things where it's just like sometimes all of those things are there, and that's great too. And ideally that's the situation. I think as I grow and my career grows, all of those things tend to be there more often. It's like, cool, it's a great paying gig. The hang is good and the music's good. And like, I feel very fortunate to have more of the situations at this point in my life now too. But in the beginning, I would take anything because you're building a career.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things that you learn also that are invaluable. That they're worth so much more than money. I'm doing things now and putting things out into the universe that don't make a ton of money right now, but the skills that I am attaining in the process, right? And I think some cats are coming out. They may have gone to music school or something like that, and it's like, man, nobody on the gig cares about what school you went to or anything like
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
That is completely irrelevant. And so, like, just because you have your student loan to pay for doesn't mean that you can say, "Oh, I'm not leaving the house for less than $300." Well, you don't have to, because there's somebody else who will, and it's always going to be that way, especially when it comes to something like music. There's always going to be somebody who does not. I remember hearing this years ago. Were you going to be a lawyer? Was that?
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
Um, well, I saw a movie called The Music Box when I was in eighth grade, and it really struck me because it was this woman who had this kind of ethical dilemma of representing her father, but then she finds out halfway through the trial that he's actually guilty of
Mm,
war crimes, and so she has this really crazy ethical dilemma around what to do. And I think I liked, I don't know, I liked the dedication to truth and honesty, and like this idea around that. And I also, what I wanted to do was um, women's rights in the workplace. That's what I wanted my kind of my specialty to be. So I went to UC Berkeley. I was a pre-law major. I was a rhetoric major with an emphasis in legal discourse. But I was always playing bass. Like, I started playing bass in high school in the jazz band. I played in the Latin jazz ensemble at UC Berkeley. I played in all sorts of small jazz combos, did some funk bands, but it was kind of more of a hobby thing. And then, yeah, I had an epiphany one day, like literally, just sun broke through the clouds. I was playing my first bass, which was my 1979 Music Man Sabre, and and I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to be a lawyer. I think I'm supposed to be a bass player. And that was a pretty terrifying prospect because at the time I was truly just a hobbyist. It was very, very, very mediocre, and just really just kind of having fun with it. So I sort of ignored the epiphany for a long time, and then it came full circle about 3 or 4 years later when I was in LA at an open house at LA Music Academy, and they had this drawing where you could put your name in the hat, and if you won, you won a free year's tuition. And I was like, I saw like there was a performance, I think by Stanley Clarke that day. There was just so much crazy stuff going on. I was so inspired. They had classes on the music of Jaco Pastorius, classes on the music of John Paul Jones, it was like Chuck Rainey, theory classes, and I was kind of blown away that this existed. And they pulled the name out of the hat at the end of the day, and I did not get picked. And I got in my truck and I cried the entire drive home. I just sobbed,
from
and I knew at that second. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
from LA to the Bay. Were you crying along?
No, I was living down there at the time. I moved down there for like a year because I was pretty
Oh,
lost after I
okay.
graduated from college.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I was just lost. I was lost, and I went to that thing and I cried the whole way home. And I knew at that moment in time, that was like the completion of the epiphany. I was like, oh, if I don't do this music thing, I'm never going to be happy. I'm always going to feel um, like I'm, missing out on something. And so that was really the beginning of it. And the funny thing is even though I'm not a lawyer arguing for women's rights in the workplace, I'm kind of doing it from an inside angle. I'm in a very male-dominated industry, playing an instrument that's very male-dominated, and kind of dealing with it from a different way. So it worked out.
Oh man, see, okay. I'm glad. Like I didn't write any. I don't have. I've got these little bullet points, and then I'm like, no, I just want to talk to Angeline because I know she's gonna say something that's gonna be like, oh dang. So the first thing I want to, is the guts that it takes to say, you know what, I'm just gonna do this. I was talking to a very good friend of mine earlier today, and I was saying, she's got an idea that she wants to do. And again, I'm in this space where I'm doing things, and I'm like, our time on this earth is finite. And if nothing happens, nothing happens. But the time is going to go by whether you do that thing that you want to do or not. Now, were you thinking, I want to be like, I want to be a rock star, or you're just like, no, I just want to play bass for a living?
No, I didn't even have. I just wanted to play bass, and that was the end of the sentence. It was like there was no like for a living or a rock star or anything. It was just like, I just loved it. I was studying, and had read Victor Wooten's book. I had learned his harmonic version of Amazing Grace. Like I was just kind of in denial, really, for like years,
Yeah.
and I didn't have a plan. I just, that feeling when you are in life, and sometimes you feel a little um, lost at sea sometimes. Like you have phases where you're like, I'm on my path, and you have phases where you're like, something's not right here.
Oh
And
yeah.
I just was in that. I was in that other place where I was like, something's not right here, and I knew that was the thing. So.
Wow. Yeah, I can relate. I see you got the novation behind you.
Dude, I want to talk to you. I know you. I was like, what? I've been kind of dabbling with it on some gigs, but I need to like take it. Now that I've got the basics, I got to take a deeper dive. But I've been watching your videos.
Man, I've been loving it. And I don't want to turn this podcast into a sales pitch for my course that drops on the 18th. Synth bass for bass players. Use the code Groove and get 20% off. We'll talk about it.
I'm all,
But
I'm all over it.
but check this out. Since you brought it up, and I think it's hard not to talk about being a woman in a male dominated space. I mean, we can go as deep as you want to go. If you want, if there's some stuff you don't want to touch, I'll let you drive that bus or wear that hat. That's an inside joke between me and Cam. He'll tell you about it later.
Oh, really? Okay.
I
Oh, that's funny. He's on a plane to Scotland right now.
that told me it's Tony's birthday. But let's talk about it being a woman in this male dominated space.
Well, I mean, I have all the stories that you would expect that somebody would have.
Sure.
Um, I have all the challenges that you hear about women having in any field, especially male dominant ones. Those are all there. I have lots of funny stories and not so funny stories. I guess the most important thing that I keep coming back to when I bump up against something that feels like it's about my gender and not my skill is that I focus back on my skill.
Mm.
And the thing that I keep trying to do is just like, okay, I just have to be a better bass player. I just have to show up more prepared. I have to be bulletproof. I have to, there can't be any cracks. It's just like I keep trying to just refine who I am as a player. And, as you know, and any musician who's on this path knows, it's a never ending process. So you also have to be okay with where you're at to some degree, because it's like, I'm not the player I want to be. I want to be a better player. I have so many goals, and I'll probably never get there this lifetime. But I think that's what it's really about. It's like, if you're a woman in this industry, just focus on being good at your job. Don't don't get caught up in the other elements of it, as much, you don't place as much importance on it, because that's really what it's about at the end of the day.
I've had several female students in schools, like, singers. And, well, I still have this cousin, but, she was trying to pursue, and I said, hey, listen, we sat down and I was like, do you want to sing or do you want to be famous? And the reason I asked that is because people will sell their souls to be famous. You know what I mean? They'll do whatever to be famous. And it can be a thin line. It's a dangerous line. I've had female high school students who are now out there actively pursuing music, and I don't know. I feel like my saying this to them in a like almost a fatherly way, pulling them aside and saying, "Hey, listen, learn music, learn the business. You can fight for the world that you want, but you still have to navigate the world that you live in. And men are going to be men. And so if you go in there, a pretty girl who can sing, dime a dozen, right? And people are going to kind of test you. They're always going to test you. Like, everybody's got a cross to bear. But when you know your stuff, right? When you know your stuff and you're like that rock solid, and you kind of push people back a little bit more. But it still doesn't change that you have to deal with that. And here I am sitting here, talking to a woman in the industry. Like, I don't know. I can't imagine what that's like. I know what it's like being a black man and walking into spaces and having preconceived notions about that. But I'm rarely, looked at, for lack of a better word, as prey. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not. Men aren't preyed on in that way. So I don't know. Aside from what you just said, what is there any other nugget you would share, particularly with female musicians, bass players, keyboard players, whatever, in addition to that? And if that's all you got, that was gold.
Well, I mean, sure. There's lots of things. I think unfortunately, like you said, we have the world we want to create and we want to help shape, and then we have the world that we live in. And there is a reality to that. And there are situations where I go on and it's like, for example, there's 8 guys in a room and a woman, and it's like the person talking will only make eye contact with the men in the room, or you get talked over a lot, or you say something and people ignore you, and then the person next to you says the exact same thing, and then everyone says, "Oh, that's a good idea." It's like all these things happen, and unfortunately, you can't really get pissed about it because it's not going to work in your favor. You have to remain professional. You have to be, and I think especially as a woman, you probably heard this a lot, you have to be assertive but not aggressive. You have to be kind of witty. You almost have to be witty about the way that you do it, or crack a joke like, "Oh, haha," like, I'm standing right here, or whatever it is. But you have to be able to let that roll off your back and also assert your boundaries, because unfortunately, a lot of times it's our job to teach people how to act.
Hey,
like
one of my favorite saying is you gotta train people how to treat you.
Yes.
But we have that just as bass players. Just as bass players, forget your race or your gender. Just as players. Like, I love it when a singer will like walk over and talk to the keyboard player, just assuming that the keyboard player is like the smartest person in the room. And I want to whisper, he doesn't know the changes. You know what I'm saying? He's trying to church his way out of this. He doesn't know the song.
So like he can skate in after the one, whereas I have to be in on the one with the right change,
Right? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Talk about this. So another bullet point that I had here, and I just want to keep it rolling, keep wherever it goes, but
Sure.
what advice would you give for like really standing out? Now, Cam said something about you, and I love this. I love this phraseology that he used. He's good like that. He said, Ange is ruthlessly prepared. So my question is, what tips do you have in addition to being ruthlessly prepared to stand out to band leaders and people looking to hire musicians?
Well, yes. Number one, absolutely be ruthlessly prepared. Treat your rehearsal like your gig. So, and I think that's, I was talking to my friend who lives in New York, and he was like, you show up in a very New York way, which I didn't know. I just kind of show up in the way that I feel like I need to show up, which is I have anxiety if I don't know everything about the song before I get there. Like, because I can't skate in after the one. But he was saying people, and I don't know, I've never lived in New York and worked in that scene, but people there show up at the rehearsal like it's the gig. And out here, people will come in more and like learn stuff at the rehearsal. So my thing is just keep showing up, at the rehearsal as if it was the gig. That's just the place for you to run the music with the band.
Yeah.
Be on time. I think be thankful, be positive on the gig. And you probably, I mean, I imagine you understand this too. Like, I learned a lot when I ran my own band, and it's really hard. You really realize by being on the other end of it what is helpful to a band leader. And for me, it's like, man, if people show up on time, if they have a positive attitude, if they don't act like they're doing you a favor for being there, if they know the music, they ask good questions, of course they play well and all that. And then after, if they're like, send some kind of like positive message or something, it's like that makes the experience enjoyable, and it just feels like everything's really good. And if somebody shows up like that consistently, you want to keep calling them back because you're like, well, this person isn't going to show up 7 minutes before sound check or downbeat, and I'm not going to have to worry about them, or I'm not going to have to send them 7 texts to figure out if they're available for a rehearsal, which is a major bummer. And then they're also not going to send me 4 messages asking me where the music is when I've emailed it and texted it and like covered all the bases. So, it's like check your email, check your messages before you kind of go asking questions. And I think it's just all of those elements. And it's funny because it is about the music, but that has to be there, but it's about so many other things. It's like, what does professionalism mean in the music world? And it's almost the same thing as I think what it means in other career paths, I imagine. Just all the usual. Like,
Yeah, I think what you're saying is, like, and I start feeling kind of old, but I'm like, man, if I send you an email, I shouldn't have to ask for you to confirm that you received it, right? Like, it seems like a basic thing for you to do is just say, got it, whatever. John Roberts posted something on Facebook today, and he was talking about, and I had to chime, just talking about people not showing up prepared and whatnot. And I put that on a few different things, but I'm like, man, I don't get caught up in this whole anointing thing. Ashlyn Cole and I had a great conversation about this recently as well. Like, some people rely so much on their gifting that they think they can just show up and just kind of kill it. I don't have those delusions about myself. I'm like, no, man, I got to shed this. And I have been playing Keybase a lot more. I got some gigs coming up now, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I needed to shed this. Like, really need to shed this. So taking my time, but I'm sorry. I'm easily on a tangent about that. Those things are so basic to me. Responding to emails and text messages and things like that. But interestingly enough, I was in New York, and a good friend of mine, Kiku Collins, plays trumpet. We were doing some showcases, and we're in SIR. And I'm just listening. I'm like, man, everybody out here is killing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
like Beyonce might have been rehearsing next door or something like that. I mean, it was crazy. And she was like, just real nonchalant. She was like, it's like whatever you play, there's 20 of them in your building, maybe even in your, you know what I'm saying? So I watch, I love New Orleans. I love my hometown or whatever. There's some killing musicians here, but there's no secret. I'm like, in other markets, you guys would not work. you would not work. And it doesn't matter how good you think you are pandering to drunk tourists or playing for drunk tourists. I mean, there's, whatever, but let's not get it twisted. Not. You wouldn't even work in the Bay Area with some of these shenanigans. Are you kidding me? You're waiting on a guy to show up to the gig, and he lets you know at the gig that he's got another gig.
Oh yeah.
That you going to keep that gig. When your phone ain't ringing, that's calling. Oh, that's a Fred Rossism. You know Fred Ross.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Fred told me that one time. He didn't tell it to me. He said it about somebody else, thankfully. He was like, when your phone ain't ringing, that's me calling. And I love that. I love that. So, I'm going to ask you about tips for auditioning for gigs and just the hustle. I mean, you kind of touched on all that just a second ago when you were talking about being prepared and just the basic things. But what about the hustle for that person that just like, I need to get out there, but I don't know how?
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you mean? Like how to, ask me that question again.
Like how do you, I'm a young bass player and I know I like playing the bass. I'm a little shy, maybe. How do I go out there and introduce myself to the scene and get the ball rolling?
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this too. I mean, the first thing I would say is support the scene. Like, be a part of it. Like, I have people ask me all the time, oh, well, I really want to work more. And I'm like, well, did you go out and see music? No, I'm really busy, which I love that excuse. Like, we're all busy. Like, join the club, But I think that's the thing. It's like, become a part of the scene, support people. There's nothing, one, you learn a lot by watching the people who are doing the things that you want to do. Two, you create connection, you support those people, and then you get an opportunity, hopefully, to, introduce yourself and do that. So I think that's always a nice thing. I mean, that's the biggest thing. What do you think? I'm curious.
Well, a part of that, I totally agree with that. And listen, I have been guilty, trust me, of being like, yeah, I don't want to go out. You know what I mean? I'm tired. But a little bit of game for anyone listening or watching is if you go out to the scene and you go out to different clubs, you're gonna notice what music people are playing, right? So when you're sitting there, you're practicing your scales or whatever, and you're like, how do I apply this shit? Well, go out there, maybe look at, oh, you know what? That band played I can't help it by Michael Jackson. I don't know why that's the song in my head. And then I, went somewhere else and this band is playing that. And this band, they all kind of play the same or similar thing. So then you start building a list and like, okay, you make this list and put that in the shed. So when you get that opportunity to get called, like here in New Orleans, we've got a lot of traditional type of music. And I'm not talking about like just jazz. I'm, just stuff that's played, Casanova. Everybody plays Casanova or We Are One by Frankie Beverly and Mays. And so if you go somewhere and you've been going places and you've been sussing out what people are playing, when you get that opportunity to get called, right, then you can just kind of go up there and kill it and own it. You know what I'm saying?
Actually, it's really true what you're talking about. And there's that thing of like the intersection of, preparation and opportunity. And if you aren't ready, then when that intersection happens, you miss it. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about your record. Nate singing, Nate soul singer on the vocals.
God, she's incredible. I love that
That song is so fire. I'm not blowing smoke. That song is kicking. It's a road song. It's a road song with the windows down or the top down. And I think in the video you got some real dope classic car in there. Come on, talk about it. Talk about it.
I do. It's an E-type Jag that one of my friends or one of my students had. And I have like I love classic cars. I kind of like the muscle cars actually,
Yeah.
but we thought maybe it'd be a little too Dukes of Hazzard if I had like, something like a Challenger. So, but yeah, it just kind of fell in my lap. So
Wait a
yeah,
minute. Wait a minute.
it was fun to do.
That Jag is for one of your students?
It's his car, one of his cars. Yeah.
Oh, one of oh. And I
Yeah.
see, friends, that's how you succeed in the music industry. You need to get you some students that have lots and lots. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So who all do you have? You got Nate on there. Who's playing drums?
That is Gary Novak.
Gary Novak. And you got Gary Novak, you on bass. Not oh man, I love me some Nate. Is Cam playing guitar?
Yeah. Cam's playing guitar. Kevin, I always call him Kev Keys. I'm like, what's Kevin's last name?
Kevin Wong or Kev Choice?
Kevin Wong.
Kevin
Yeah.
Kevin Wong. Kevin Wong.
Yeah.
That's a beast of a man.
He is so on fire, and I have the second track that's not released yet, and he took this solo on it. I'm like, it's just like the best thing ever. He's incredible.
Yeah,
I mean, incredible.
he's pretty dope. And keys are not his first instrument.
What?
Boy's a sax player.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, man, he's a sax player. He's a sax player. Everybody, I'm looking at something that I want to ask you. It's in the same lines, but really, there's going to be a link somewhere around here. Angeline is easy to find, and the song is "Come Undone." You got to hear it. It's hella dope. Go ride with your lady or your guy with the top down in a Jag if you got one. So you know what it takes to build a good reputation. But we are in the music space. There are, we are interesting people, creatives, right? So people wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Sometimes you have to do that thing where you have to assert yourself, whatnot. I had to assert myself in a situation recently. And then I was like, man, I don't want this to, I have a certain reputation. I want to maintain that reputation. But then I also have to say, hey, man, this is not the way we do things. So how do you handle those real tricky situations where the story could be misconstrued on the back end? That's a hard question.
It is a hard question. Well, the first thing is I really respect the fact that you handled a situation, whatever this was, and I think, anyway, whatever your situation was, I really respect that you spoke up and did the thing that you felt like you needed to do. I guess maybe, I hate to say this, but it might be true. A little bit as a woman, I feel like it's easier to get, like, I don't know, I'm going to say easier, but it's just like, I usually just walk away from something, and that's my statement. I have been more vocal in the past, but I think maybe I've become less vocal and more about just actions where I'm like, we're not going to work together anymore. Like, when you ask me for a gig, the answer is now no. Like, or, I just kind of learn and move away or move in a direction, that feels right. And I pick and choose. I had a situation recently where somebody did something on a gig, on the mic, and said something about me that wasn't really that cool. And it super bummed me out, actually, on the gig. Like, while I was playing, I was like, oh man, because it was somebody that I really respect and love. And I think they were really just having a bad day, actually, which is what it was. But I spoke to Cam about it. I had to make a call. Like, am I going to have a conversation with this person? Am I going to, speak my mind? And I actually chose in this particular situation, I was like, I'm going to let it go, but it's on my radar. And if it happens again, then I'm going to say something or just walk away. So I don't know. I guess I've become maybe a little more passive in my, my old age, whatever, around stuff. I just try and stay away from anything that's like bad energy.
It's interesting, Cam. I will always speak so highly of Honest Cam. He lives up to that. I mean, I've known Cam long. I mean, over 20 years now, and it's he has seen me at my worst, right? And there was a time, and I think it's okay to be transparent about this because we all have our journeys, where I was always like really vocal about things that I didn't like, or if I was being treated unfairly or something like that. And a singer told me one time, well, nobody ever has to guess where they stand with you. And I was like, yeah. And as I began to mature a little bit, and one or two missed opportunities, let's keep it on it. You know what I mean? Keep it a buck,
Yeah.
as the kids say. Um, Maybe nothing wrong with a little mystery. You know what I mean? Maybe we get through this gig, and the next time you call, if you decide to call, I'm busy that day.
Mm-hmm.
Binge watching Friends. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because,
Like,
but then there's where I think also, that comes to a certain point in our careers, right, where we can build up the economic stability or whatever to be able to say, I'm not going to do that. And so, that makes me think that I wish I would have done this a little bit more. Younger musicians, if you're out there, give things some timestamps. You're going to have to like eat dirt every now and again. You know what I mean? I guess it depends how you eat it and what you do with the stuff that you pick up in there, because the man, the community is so small. Even New Orleans to the Bay, New York. I mean, it's small, right?
it really is. Yeah. You start to learn that the more you stick around,
Yeah, yeah. Matter of fact, there's a trombone player that's here in town right now, and Cam's like, "Oh, look out for Sophie." I told her, and I just randomly went to vacuum out my car the other day, and I'm driving, and I see this woman walking with a trombone. I'm like, Sophie, what are you? What are you doing? You're from the Bay, and you're walking around with your trombone. But I guess it's New Orleans, so that's the thing. We could do that. You know what
she
I
was
mean?
just out there on a gig. Cool. Yeah.
On the gig, she was going to the gym.
Oh, really?
Oh, well, and I don't know Sophie well at all, but I mean, there's an example right there of, the hustle. And if you want something, she's like, I'm going to take a month, go to New Orleans with my horn, and just start playing, and just start seeing. And that's a beautiful thing about being a horn player as well in a town like this, where you can just go and there's somebody always, hey, can I sit in or whatever. And typically people are pretty accommodating. So, Angeline, I really appreciate the time that you have given me today. It really means a lot. I haven't seen you since Nashville. Remember that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was the
When you were out
Bowie celebration.
no more
Mm-hmm.
doing a Bowie tribute.
Yeah. With Todd Rundgren and Adrian Blue. That was fun. That was a great day. I'm glad we got to connect there. That
Yeah,
was
man,
cool.
we got the juice down there. Remember that, the little green
Yeah.
juice place? Yeah. Absolutely.
That's it.
Any parting words of wisdom?
Mm, um, I, I don't know. I always say it's like you kind of got to be a little bit like a cockroach. You know, it's like survive like the nuclear fallout to be, around long enough because all sorts of things come up. Yeah, I don't know. I think we covered everything. I
Yeah.
mean,
Be resilient, right?
yeah, resilient. You gotta love it, and yeah, that's it. Um, I don't know.
I think you gave us some real, just the epiphany that really hit me personally, right? That I need to sit back and think about things myself. you know, but look, I appreciate you, baseheads. This is Angeline Saris. She is awesome. Check out that single, Come Undone. Find as many things on this woman as you possibly can. I mean, if you want to see an example of a person that may not be a household name, but is out there just doing the thing and following her passion and her heart and being good to people along the way, you ought to do that. So if you haven't done it already, go on and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share with a musician that you think would find value in this content. And let me know also in the comments or somewhere around this video or this podcast or wherever you find it, what kind of content you want to see next and who else you want to see next on the show. Until next time, as always, y'all, peace, two fingers.